Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. In each episode, I will engage with leaders who are sharing authentic stories that support impactful influence. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. You will gain insights from leaders who face the same challenges you may encounter and discover strategies to navigate them with resilience and purpose. Today, we're diving into the world of leadership, culture, and impact with a powerhouse in the HR space, Billie Wright. Billie's journey into HR was what she calls a happy accident, but there's nothing accidental about the way she's redefining leadership. As the Chief People Officer at the Recycling Partnership, she's championing people-first strategies in a mission-driven organization committed to a circular economy. With over 2 decades of experience scaling teams, driving transformation, and coaching for greatness, Billie is all about excellence in education and servant leadership with lasting impact. Beyond the boardroom, she's a force in the HR community, serving as the 2023 president of Austin Sherm and co-directing Texas's Pinnacle Award-winning Lead HR's program. A master facilitator, sought-after speaker, and certified leadership coach, Billie brings curiosity, fun, and strategy to every room she enters. If you're seeking healthy leadership engagement in an open, empowering, and authentic environment, then you're in the right place. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving a problem. So let's grow together. Well, welcome to a fresh episode of Cultivate. Today, we have an absolute powerhouse in the world of people and purpose. Billie Wright, Chief People Officer at the Recycling Partnership, is in the house. Billie, we are thrilled to have you here for the Cultivate experience.
Wendy, I am so glad to be here. I'm truly honored and humbled by the invitation as well. And so I look forward to diving into this conversation and talk about all things leadership.
Well, I can barely stay in the seat is what I'm telling you. And I just know, like every great conversation, Billie, our time together is just going to fly by. So we're going to dive right in. I want you to tell us, you and I have had an opportunity in the green room, but to tell the listeners about your role and how the Recycling Partnership is making a real impact in the communities across the country.
Sure. So I am the Chief People Officer at the Recycling Partnership. I've only been there a short time, but I always tell my colleagues I feel like I've been there a year and a day because it's just so welcoming and just fit right
Mm.
in. We are a nonprofit organization, woman founded, woman led, small organization, only roughly about 90 employees spread out across the United States, to include one international employee over in the Netherlands. But we are a
Right.
small but mighty group. And with the Recycling Partnership, what we like to say that we do is that we like to help communities educate and aware around policy making in this space, in recycling space, helping
Mm.
companies and communities as well as policymakers to help build and establish policy in this space. But at the end of the day, Wendy, what we're really about is making sure that we leave this planet a better place through recycling, through education and awareness. And I'll tell you my own personal story later about recycling and my experience with it coming from the South and moving to the North Pacific Northwest.
Mm.
But that's what we're all about at the Recycling Partnership. We are really about communities, about making sure that we help pass policy in terms of how we help people really understand and become educated and aware around the importance of recycling.
And I love that. I love that there is that emphasis and really cornerstone of educating. Because I think we all have our idea of what it means to recycle or not, why
Mhm.
people do and feel like they're over the top so to educate what why do we actually do this? Why is it important? I love that in our conversation, as we stepped into this space, you described your entry into
Mhm.
human resources as a happy
Yeah.
accident. I love it. Can you take us back to that moment? What led you to really embrace this HR calling?
You're going to take me back to when I was 12, Wendy.
Come on. Come on.
So as you and I discussed in the green room earlier, I it was truly a happy accident. My whole
Mm,
career prior to then, I would even call it a career. I would call it just working jobs. I was a chief
yes.
executive assistant to hospital CEOs, to chiefs of surgery, to chiefs of neurology. I was always working in the medical field, but as an executive assistant. And when my husband and I, when we were stationed here in Killeen, Texas, I worked at a hospital that had an executive VP of HR who happened to be a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen one of those before in my entire job searching career mode, because at that particular time, those roles were really reserved for white men. Very
Mm-hmm.
few women held those leadership roles in HR back then. They were very much administrative. And she just kept after me for 9 months. The woman was
Woo.
relentless to come and work for her to be an HR assistant. Now, you see where I'm going with this? Chief executive assistant, just an HR assistant, is in, and, so it was a peg or two down,
Mm-hmm.
gone were my position of power, because I really was a gatekeeper to the calendar
Yes.
for all things related to the CEO or chief of surgery. And taking that role also required that I take a $2 an hour pay cut.
Wow.
Best $2 an hour pay cut I ever took. I went to HR as an HR assistant and learned everything that I could learn in HR from this lady. She just saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And as I stated to you earlier, I never really thought of a job as a career. I never really
Mm-hmm.
thought to look for a career. I always looked for a job. But this
That's
gave me
right.
space to form a career. And so it was a very happy accident. So fast forward 25 years or so later, I'm still in it. And I've been starting as an HR assistant, and now here I am as a chief people officer of a company spread across these United States.
And I love that. I love how you can see that the accident as being something as such a positive, and
Mm-hmm.
making that transition from I'm just not going to do a job. This is a
Mm-hmm.
career. I didn't see that coming, but you just kept stepping forward
Mm-hmm.
into it. But you had to have somebody who
Mm-hmm.
saw that and call you up
Yeah.
into.
Yeah.
You've built a leadership philosophy that I say is rooted
Mm-hmm.
in servant leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and lasting impact. So not just for here for today. How did your personal experiences really shape this leadership style that you have?
So I am the daughter of a daughter of a daughter who was raised in a Southern Baptist church. And and coming from that background, where my dad was the head deacon at our church, my grandmother's grandfather, who was a slave, helped build our family church. There's
Mm,
always this sense of community in giving back. Up until the day my mom passed away, she was serving others in the disability community, in the disabled community. And so when people talk about servant leadership, there's always these styles. You have a coaching style. What kind of style do you have when you have that? But it's the philosophy that really is near and dear and core to me, and that is around
hmm.
servant leadership. And for me, servant leadership, my faith is my number one core value. It is very much biblically based. And servant leadership is not in the sense of, I got to go out and serve others and not lead. It's knowing when to serve, how to
Mm.
serve. Do you serve people from the rear, from the side, from the back, from the front? How do you serve others in a way that also lifts them up? It's not just about you. It's not just about the work. It's about the people in which you serve. And if you serve people in the right way from a leadership perspective, everything else comes into play, because it all boils down to how you treat people. And servant leadership is a huge part of that, and making sure that you understand that. I hate it when people throw out the phrase, I'm a servant leadership leader, and can't really explain it, because it is not just about serving others and not doing your job. It's about being of service to others, and how you can lift those other people up. How do you lift others up?
I love that. I mean, that speaks into your why, which is going to
Mm-hmm.
directly translate into your influence, your leadership,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's walking that talk. not just throwing out a phrase. And so I have to believe that in your career, which we know it spans, your bio
Mhm.
tells us multiple industries from human resources to operations, executive leadership. What's been, with that why in mind, the toughest leadership lesson that you've learned along the way?
Oh my gosh, the toughest leadership lesson, it has to be around setting expectations. Now, I laugh because I'm a high performer. No joke. I am there and then some, and my son is cut from the cloth.
Love it.
I am I'm all the way up, as they say. I'm turning up every day. And so the toughest leadership lesson I had to learn is that the expectations that I set for myself, I should not make those the same expectations for others.
Mm,
And when I started out in leadership, because I had so many high expectations for myself, I set those for others without recognizing that I need to sometimes meet people where they are to help rise them. That's that
yes.
servant leadership piece. But
Yes.
I had to learn that. I had to grow into that because I made a lot of mistakes along the way with that one. Not even gonna lie to you about that one, Wendy. And so, now I sit back and I really ask people, what is it that you want to do? Where do you want to grow? How can I help support you? Because even if it's not at the top of the mountain, if it's just up the path around the bend and just laying flat right there, I'm good with that because that's where I need to meet you. And you said, Billy, this is where I'm good at. And not placing my high expectations that I set
Mm.
for myself onto others. And Wendy, that was a hard lesson I had to learn.
And
Mhm.
I'm sure that it was. You only knew your one way, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm
Yeah.
hearing in there is humility came into play. Oh, wait,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know everybody's path, meeting them where they are, but
Yeah.
I still hear a calling up because
Yeah.
there's that calling up and calling out. Sometimes folks don't
Mm-hmm.
see their
Yeah.
their own potential, but you still had to meet them where they
Mm-hmm.
currently were.
Mm-hmm.
In your role, you
Yeah.
sit at a crossroads. You sit at an intersection of people, purpose, and sustainability. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, how do you create that culture where people feel connected to the mission of the organization? They where do they get their why and the mission's why and bringing that
Mm-hmm.
together? What's your role in that?
Mm-hmm. So, Wendy, I think this is where a lot of leaders get it wrong because they're always about the business. You
Mm,
can't do the business without the people.
mm,
And in order to bring the people along to support the why of the mission and why we do the work that we do, it starts with behaviors for one, how are we modeling behaviors, but
okay.
also to how are you building those relationships? If people don't trust you, they will not follow you, no matter what it is. You can write a million things that sound good and look good on a sheet of paper, put it on your website, get notebooks printed on it, slap it on a wall. You can do all of that stuff, but if the people say, no, I don't see myself in that, they're not going to support it. So all you have are words on a sheet of paper and people are just showing up to get a paycheck. And so, and they're not going to stay for that because they can't see themselves in it and to support the mission. And where I see myself in there is really being that catalyst, it's really being that
Mm,
person in the middle that says, hey, folks, we need to, when we're making decisions about things and explaining the why, we need to also to understand the impact. It is not about the intent. It is always about the impact
mm,
and making sure that we understand that we need to do things, not all the time, but for the most part, we need to do things with people and not to people. And I find that organizations feel as though if they do things to people in terms of decision making without considering the impact, which is the two part, then they have missed it. They've missed the mark. And it's hard to unwind and rewind all of that once the damage has been done. So I find my role in helping to really bring those three things together is really about making sure that first we understand the mission, we understand the why, we can clearly explain the why, we do things with people and not to people, and we are really intentional about not just forming those relationships, but sustaining them also. How are we feeding those relationships? How are we building trust across it? Because once trust is gone, all bets are out the window.
And you couldn't have said it any clearer, bringing that clarity into play.
Yeah.
And you said this, it's not even just about having to do a rewind. You've taken steps backwards at that point in
Yeah.
time. So even when you are talking about the business, which is important, there are goals to be met.
Mhm.
When you don't keep the people in the forefront,
Yeah.
you actually are going the other direction. And
Yes, you
so
are.
now the business is not moving forward.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that those 3 points that you brought out, we really need to sit in. I most recently was leading a
Mm.
group, and
Yeah.
they talked about, I was like, do you know your mission? Do you know the mission and the vision of
Mm.
this organization? And the answer was, yes, we have it on the wall. It was artwork. Yes, but do you know it? Are we living it? Do you see it lived out in front of you with your leadership? And so, so important. And again, in that trust space, transformation is a constant in human resources and business. We are always on the move. So,
Mhm.
how do you navigate the friction that comes when change and
Mhm.
culture shifts, especially when you're receiving that high resistance, whether from on the front line or from your leadership?
Mhm. Ooh, child. So, so Wendy, our organization is just went through this past quarter,
Mm,
and it was
mm,
not easy. We had to lay some people off. We did a complete reorg. Our business model changed. We had a lot going on in the first 3 months, and I have a small team. There's only 4 of us in people operations. So, and typically when you have a lot of change like that's going on, HR or people ops, we catch it coming and going.
oh, yes.
But I will say with this organization, our leaders from all fronts stepped up. We held Q&A sessions. Our CEO developed a change management plan for our leaders to follow so they could understand what was going on. We had our all employee offsite in Atlanta to where there were breakout rooms where employees could meet with the various new arms and lines of business that we had
Mm,
implemented so they could ask questions and understand the why and the need for us changing in this fashion and asking questions, opening up a hotline. I mean, we did things 10 to 12 times over to
mm-hmm.
ensure that employees had the right channels to communicate, whether it was in open forum, in a private forum, one-to-one settings. We did more than I think most organizations would to allow employees the opportunity and space to just be, as I like to call it. Because one thing I know for certain, change is all around it. It's going to happen.
That's right.
And
Mm-hmm.
what got us here won't get us there. And if we're
Woo,
not getting better, we're getting left behind. And when we get left behind, we're out of the game. And
that's
so
it.
you have to make sure that when we're talking about as much change as we went through, that we clearly explain the why. Now, did we have resistance? Absolutely. We still have resistance today. Because sometimes, when you're going through change like this, my best friend may no longer be on my team. So we don't
Mm,
share the work that we share. Or I don't clearly understand what my role looks like. I used to do widget A yesterday, and now they're saying I
I
got
do.
to do widgets B and C. I don't like widgets B and C. I see what they do. So, you're going to have resistance. It's really about how do you still allow the space for people to grow when you have that resistance, and how do you manage and mitigate it? You're never going to get 100% of the people 100% of the time to go along with everything. You're never going to have a kumbaya organization, no matter how large or small. But I will say that our organization, we managed through these very trying times and through these trying waters with grace, with humility, with understanding, and more importantly, Wendy, with kindness. I think that
Mm,
was more important than anything, that being kind. And you and I both know there's a difference between being kind and nice. Nice is let me
come
hold the
on.
door for you. Kind is from the heart. And we
That's
did
right.
that. And I truly believe that our employees feel very much what I like to say, warm, wanted, and welcome, even
Oh, I
after
love it.
we've gone through this very, very trying time. So I hope I answered your question in a very roundabout way, but you
You
get that
did.
transformation is all around us. It's really I picked this up somewhere in my travels, in my training travels. I had an instructor that said, when change comes around, it's like an equation. It's this E plus R equals O. The event happens, plus how you respond or react to it determines the outcome. And the
Outcome.
only part of that equation that you can control is the R. You can't control anything else. The event's going to be what it's going to be, but how you respond and react to it will determine your outcome, because the outcome for the organization is going to be what it intended it to be. But it's really that R part, and that's the change piece of it. And and understanding people go through change very differently. It's that transition piece we have to help people move out of. And
Yes.
so it's interesting that you just asked that question. We're coming out on the tail end of all of this, but we made it. We
Well,
made it to
and
still,
and you made it because you created a space, and you said it, for people to be able to be seen and heard and to be able to communicate. It was never the intent that you were going to have 100% buy-in, because if any leader believes that that is the goal, well, you have fooled yourself. But have you created a place and a space where everyone can have their voice be heard and recognize that it is clear where we are going? There may be, I'm speaking to HR, an opportunity for someone to self-select. This is not where I need to be any longer. And that is okay if we have done all that we can, like you said, to speak into have the most positive response. I love that equation. I think that we all need to write that down. I love equations that don't involve numbers. It's good.
And Wendy, I have to tell you, I'm glad that you pointed out the self-selection piece. I used to have an old boss, and he used to say, when you're going through change, you change people or change people. And he meant through the self-selection piece, people
That's
will
right.
change and just self-select out, or you change their habit of thinking around the thing that you're implementing. And
That's
and that's the
absolutely
end
correct.
game, is changing, helping someone change their habit of thinking around why it's so necessary that we implement this change at this moment in time. But yeah, I love the
Yes.
self-selection piece.
Yes, it is. And you're actually given a gift at that point. I mean, if you think of it, let's not hold people to where they, anyway, we can go down that
Whole
road.
nother story.
A whole nother story. You know, your sector, and as a human resources leader, and you've been doing this for quite a while, it often carries, we talk about all the things that we've just spoken about, a heavy emotional weight, of the organization. People are holding on to these places and these feelings. How do you personally maintain your resilience and prevent what we talk about all too often, the burnout, while leading at such a high level?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, Wendy, now that is a loaded question for sure, especially coming out of the age of COVID. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a study done by Sherm and by Gartner right as we were coming out of COVID. And 95% of HR professionals surveyed said they had experienced burnout. 95%.
Yes.
Because HR is all things to everybody but themselves. And that's truer than
Oh.
that. It is so true. HR,
Mm-hmm.
people ops, whatever you want to call it, we are always on the front line
Taken
of
care
every
of.
crisis that happens in an organization, every crisis like COVID that happened across the globe. Return to
Yes.
office, you can see it coming. You can see the things happening in the DEIB space. All of these things,
Mm-hmm.
HR is always on the front line of it.
Front
And
line.
I will say
Mm-hmm.
personally for myself, I have often find myself challenged with some of these changes that are coming out. And how do I personally manage and mitigate it for myself? Because I'm having to
Yes.
lead people through it. Because they're gonna see what I'm doing and model that or be afraid to go against it. It's gonna be one of the
Oh
two.
gosh.
And
That's
so
right.
I sometimes I have to sit in it, but I also do have to be honest with myself and with the people in that I lead. And one of the things I have done in the past when I have been faced with these type of situations is that being honest with them and saying, "Hey, this is where I am in this moment in space. I need a minute, but I also too need for you all to reflect and ask yourself if you need a minute. But I also
Mm.
too want to still leave space and time open for all of us to talk about it." And and even in my new role here, we have spent many of our team meetings dedicated to, can we talk? Instead of
I love
work,
it.
can we talk? Because sometimes that's all that's needed. I'm not trying to put my
Mm-hmm.
opinion or anything out for others, but you just have to allow people space to talk. Because sometimes that can be the remedy. And people will say, okay, now that I've gotten that out, what do we need to do to make sure that this happens? But sometimes you just need to sit, and that is just keeping it real for a leader too. You can't be at this level operating this high all the time and like nothing bothers you. Okay, it's gonna bother you. So how do you manage yourself? I see a lot of things. I know I'm probably going off script here, Wendy, but I see all these
Hmm.
courses because I used to be a subscriber to this too, and it was around time management, taking time management courses,
Oh,
time
yes.
management here, all this stuff. I had a really good coach friend of mine, and she says, "Why do you use time management?" She says, "How you manage yourself is an indication of how you manage your time." And it
Woo!
hit me like a thunderbolt. And when she said that to me, that is when I had the aha moment is like, when all of these things are coming at you from left field, how am I managing myself? How am I managing myself? Because that's gonna also to reflect how I show up. And so even with this
Yes.
going on with our burnout, if you had some of my team members on here, they'd probably say, "Oh yeah, Billy is always telling us if you need a mental health day, I need you to take a mental health day. I need you to be well." Because there's always this thing in HR with the burnout, because
Mm-hmm.
we are everything or expected to
Right.
be everything for everything. What is that movie? Everything, always, all at once.
That's it. That's it. All of those pieces are moving your way. And that
Yeah.
self-awareness space, now
Mm-hmm.
you've created a space for your team. And you're right, they're watching you. And the
Mm-hmm.
staff is watching.
Mm-hmm.
How does Billy walk this out? And is she walking the talk? Do you need that
Mm-hmm.
space? And are you taking that space? But to create that place and space to say, I do need a minute. Or let us
Mm-hmm.
talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Because let's face it, we all know if we're not talking about it together, we still talking about it. It's over there
We
in the
still talking
corner.
about
It's so
it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so let's have healthy conversation about it. I
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Mm-hmm.
We look at organizations in this way of in this place of scaling, right? How do we
Mm-hmm.
scale what we're doing? But also in that maintain the strong values that are the culture of the organization. And that's a tricky
Mm-hmm.
balance. We don't want to just grow wide, we want to continue to go deep. Where are you seeing the growing pains, specifically in your team or even within the company culture right now, trying to do that
Mm-hmm.
that balancing act?
Right. I would say with us right now, just even on our small and mighty team, our growing pains right now is really around a lot of the executive orders that are coming out of this administration right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
having to stretch ourselves because we are a nonprofit. And and a
Yes.
lot of the things and work that we do, some of the executive orders can impact that. And those are really hard things for us right now to mitigate. We have a lot of the state laws that are changing because of the administration that are impacting HR, not just in DEIB, but also to in
Yes.
family paid medical leave. It's affecting
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. It's also, affecting in how we recruit and hire and all of these things. There's a tremendous amount of pressure right now on HR professionals across this country. There just are. I've managed a team as large as 65. It would have been the same in a union environment.
Yes.
Would have been the same.
Yes.
And then here we are in a team, and there's four of us that includes me, and it's still the same. And so you're having to figure out how do you manage all of this, staying within the confines now of these restrictions, and still do
Mm-hmm.
your best work and not compromise your level of integrity along
And
the way. And
that
mhm, that part.
And there goes the challenge, right? Because you cannot
It is.
lose yourself as a
Mhm,
leader and those individuals and represent. You can't lose yourself in the midst of this to keep that
mhm,
balance in it to,
mhm,
to keep those things in balance. Um,
mhm.
I
Yeah.
I can appreciate and I really I applaud you to step into that space and to speak that out. I know that right now, where we are in our world and space, people are holding tight. These are the realities that are in front of us. These changes are happening wherever we may personally feel and sit with them.
Mhm,
They are in front of us. And as leaders, how we walk that out, how we create space for those
mhm,
conversations for people to speak about being uncomfortable, that's going to speak about how we walk through. We're not getting around it.
mhm,
How do we make our way through this space? Because
mhm,
it's an evolving nature of the work that we're doing, the careers that we are
mhm.
in.
Yeah,
You
it is.
said something about uh, people and even retaining, like, let's step into that space, retaining the top talent. is a challenge across
Mhm.
all industries, right? We are seeing that through COVID with the administrative changes. People are just at a point where they're like, I don't have to do something that I don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable in.
Mhm.
What strategies, your role, your space here hasn't been that long, but what strategies across your career have worked well for you when you start to see those gaps in losing that top talent? How do you mitigate that space?
So, fortunately for us, I guess I should knock wood somewhere. We do not have a retention problem at my organization. Hallelujah. Praise all the saints because we don't. But I will tell you, in past organizations where the turnover rate has been high, um, we have not, the organization, HR, managers, there's a lot across the board that can be said.
Mm,
We did not manage it appropriately. I've always said, so I love anything around culture transformation. I love to
yes.
see a culture transform. It's just, you can see it just bloom like spring right in front of your eyes,
Ooh,
just right in
yes.
front of you when it is done well and when it is done right. But when it is done poorly, you will see them die on the vine and then they're out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I've seen in past organizations when we're talking about retention and seeing good talent walk out the door is because we did not pay attention to them on the front end. We did
That's right.
not understand and exactly what any issues they may have been bringing up, things we overlooked. We didn't notice if people were becoming disengaged. And so, like you, Wendy, I'm a coach, and so I read body language a lot. And people always like, well, why is she so quiet? I'm like, I'm not quiet. I'm watching. I'm nosy like that. So,
Reading that
but
room. Let's
I'm
read it.
reading the room, just reading the room. And I would always notice a change in people's body language. And
Mm-hmm.
I would often ask when I see that, what's going on? It seems like you're a little off today or something. And usually you can pick up on that. Now, I'm not saying everybody has that mindset, can do that, any of that. But those are some indicators when you see your most productive employees going silent. You should wake up.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to pay attention to that because by the time they walk out the door, throwing a bag of money at them, it's just not going to do it. They're eventually going to leave because you're
It's
not going to
too
do it.
late. That's
It's
right. It's
too
too
late.
late.
So where we are now at the recycling partnership, we had an exit interview process, but we implemented too a stay interview process. So we just
Love it.
started that this quarter, and I'm so happy that we're doing that because once they walk out the doors, what's that's gone. I mean, yeah, they left us with feedback on that, but these issues were going over their tenure here, which things we should have addressed. But we want to know right now what's making you
Mm-hmm.
stay, what's keeping you here, and what would make you leave. Those are the kind of things that's most important. So you can address, you can either keep doing, you can stop, or do something new. But it's really about capturing the voice of the employee while they're here. After they're gone, then it could become a disgruntled employee at that time. So,
Tell me something that I need to know. I may not want to know
I
it, but
know,
I need to
but
know
I
it.
need to know it. I need to know it. So, but those are the kind of things that I have been faced with in former jobs around retention. Is really about
Mm-hmm.
how do we figure out a better way to capture that feedback. Well, engagement surveys are good, okay, but they don't tell you
Yes,
the root cause of it. You need to know the root
absolutely.
cause.
And that's it. So we're not just addressing symptoms. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get, because if there's one, there's 12.
That's
Like,
it.
let's just recognize that this is not usually a one-off
Mm-hmm.
situation. And you mentioned it. Yes, in the role that I have in my coaching with Cultivate for Good, it's all about fostering exactly what you
Mm-hmm.
said, those healthy, empowering, authentic leadership
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, calling people up into the space, right? That what we're doing is never just about us. It is for those that we have in our under our influence. So if you could, as we're going to get wrapping up here shortly, if you had to give a challenge to our listeners who want to grow into those impactful leaders, what would that be? Like, what's that thing? You can't miss this as you move into your and being called up into that journey.
If I had to tell my younger self anything
Mm,
that you can't miss this,
yes.
you can't miss out on an opportunity to have someone of influence mentor you. You can't miss it. So I will say this from a person, from a woman of color. We
Yes.
typically don't ask for mentorship. We typically don't ask for it. I didn't ask for it, but I had that one woman, that one Black EVP of HR, stepped in the gap and said, I'm going to mentor you. You can take that $2 an hour pay cut, but it's going to be the best pay cut ever. And she wasn't lying, but she mentored me. And I think to myself, had I not had that opportunity, I can't say that I'd be sitting here in this role, in this spot, on this call with you. I can't say that any of that would have happened because somebody saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And if you ever feel the opportunity to where you're afraid to do something, do it anyway. Don't let fear hold you back. Just do it anyway. Because the worst thing that can happen is somebody says no. You're not doing it now. So what's the harm?
So you didn't lose. You didn't lose anything.
You didn't lose anything. And the other thing I would say, I did a podcast with another guy, and he was asking me something similar along this one. He goes, "What would be that thing?" And I would say the question would be, "What if?" You can't mess with what if. If you ask that question of yourself, "What if? What if I did that thing that I think is so scary? What's the worst that could happen?"
What's happening?
And if I had to go back and tell my younger self that, I would do all of that and then some. But really seeking guidance and support from people, you can always ask people. The worst they can say is no. But just making sure that I know that there are people out there who can be available to me if I would only ask. What if I only asked?
The power of the ask is impactful.
It is. Totally.
And I love that. I love that you bring that boldness, not just to those who you are leading, but you're bringing that to yourself. Like you haven't arrived. You're not saying I'm here and I don't need to do that any longer. So that to me really resonates in what you're saying. And that charge, I will couple that with, and then have someone who's going to hold you accountable to that. This is now what I've stepped into, and keep that accountability in front of you. And so I think that that's a responsibility we have to one another. So Billie, what's next for you? How are you personally cultivating your own growth and leadership journey as we talk about that?
So, I've been, thank you, Wendy, for that. Because, that's almost like that question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm not going to go 5 years deep, but I will say this. So I volunteer in my local HR community a lot. I was the past president for Austin Sherm. In 2023, I was the president. And after my tenure from past president of last year, I continued my volunteerism at the state level. So I'm a co-director for our Sherm, Texas affiliate for our leaders program. It's leadership development program for our chapter presidents and president-elects. And it is a great 6-week program to help them grow and develop around leadership. I still mentor. I love, love, love mentoring. I don't think I'll ever stop doing that.
Well, thank goodness. We'd all be missing out, Billie. We'd all be missing out.
I love to mentor. It's just, I even wrote an article about it. I'm so exuberant about it because I think it's extremely important. But what holds the future and the next thing for me really is about how can I continue to be a better version of myself? Every day I try to be and do a little bit better than the day before. Because it's a gift every day that I get to do this. I really consider it a gift and a privilege. And so when I can get up and make just a small impact with someone, that is tremendous for me. I don't do this looking for things. I mean, honestly, I got a whole book and a card deck full of people thanking me for stuff. That's all great, but I don't do it for that. And in fact, I'm actually having coffee with one of my mentors that I had over a year or so ago. So, but just keeping in contact with those people and making sure that I can be present for others and where I can help people, I do. Because for me, it is all about that. It's all about sharing and how can I help and lift others up. Because that's important. That's very, very important to me, Wendy.
It is. And I love, and what a way for us to wrap things up. Be present. Be present. That's a very active statement, and it is for everyone. I love that.
Yeah.
Billy, this has been such an inspiring conversation. I knew it. I knew it from the green room, and now everyone else will be able to partake. So thank you for taking us into this deep, deep dive into relational leadership, your journey, being very transparent, giving us a front row seat into the amazing impact that the Recycling Partnership is having across the country. If people want to interact and engage with the organization, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. They can look me up. They can go to our website, the recyclingpartnership.org, to learn more about our organization, and they can contact us directly from there. We love to hear from people about the work that we're doing in communities. And if you go to our website, you can see the great work that we did in Flint, Michigan. It's a big to do. So I won't spoiler
Wow.
alert. I'll just make sure that people hear that and they can go to the site and see what we did with Flint,
Check it
Michigan.
out.
Check it out, because it is a big deal. And and I will just say this, with the Recycling Partnership, we're helping over 9,000 communities across this country. In our efforts with recycling, it is not just about the plastic bottle. It really is about protecting and honoring Mother Earth and making sure that we have a lasting impact for years to come after we're gone.
Before, yes, beyond all of us. And isn't that's the
Beyond,
difference
yeah,
between work and a career? That's the difference between
yeah,
that impactful space that we all want
yeah,
to be in and know that we're making a
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Your passion and insights are so truly energizing, and it's been such
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure having you on today.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate the invitation. I hope to do it soon. Hope to do it again.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I want to say to our viewers and listeners, that's a wrap for today. But remember, each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of what I call relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up, making an impact, and being better together. Thank you so much. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, asking for a friend, or interested in being a guest on the show, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com. Remember, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together.